Okay, what about a sword but like long? We have that already. Alright, fine, then how about a sword that's long and wide? Oh, well that would be great, right? No, like that's the great sword. Oh, I see what you mean. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, I always like to say that there are two main things above all else that cause people to fall in love with the Monster Hunter series. One of those things is the monsters themselves, their ecology, their designs, and their actual movesets in the game as well, of course. But the other big one is the weapons. As of WoW specifically, we have 14 separate weapon types, each with their own unique identity, flavor, and visuals, and even if you're someone like me who loves playing tons of different weapons interchangeably, you most likely have one or two weapons above all others that are your proper favorites, because there are just such varied, interesting movesets among the weapons that it's very easy for anyone who plays these games to find at least one weapon that really clicks with them on a personal level. But hey, there wasn't always 14 weapons. In one game we even had 15 weapons technically, and the first Monster Hunter only had 7. So over the years, over multiple games and generations, we have doubled the amount of weapon types, but the most recent time one was added was back in the 4th generation. No new weapons in Monster Hunter World, in Monster Hunter Rise, or now in Wilds either, which begs an interesting question. Are we done getting new weapon types forever? Is what we got, or are they just taking their time to cook up something particularly interesting and special? Either way, I always find it fun to speculate about potential new weapons for this series, and with Wilds having so many different new systems and changes in the combat flow, and with us now knowing what mechanics from Rise Break are going to hold over to future games, and which ones won't, I think it's a fun time to discuss some of these concepts again, the idea of new weapons. So today I want to talk about 5 designs for new weapons that I would love to see added to the Monster Hunter series. Things that I think would be a lot of fun, with part of the goal being to try and have its own gameplay niche, not filled by the existing 14, part of it being for it to like fit and make sense within the context of the game and the world, and beyond that, I just want cool things that make me smile when I imagine slapping a monster in the face with them. On that note, first one up today is not an idea of my own, but instead something that has stuck with me since I first saw it shared. These are the boom fists. This is a weapon designed by Lane Cruiser, and I, along with many others, have said for quite a long time that a fist weapon or gauntlet style weapon would be an awesome inclusion for the Monster Hunter series, and there is a clear gap for a faster blunt weapon or dual blunt weapons, and this could fit those extremely well. You could argue even Capcom agrees that that playstyle niche exists because they made the Akuma moveset a thing that you could just straight up use in Wilds for combat in general, though it is of course not a full weapon either by any means. Conceptually, the boom fists are just sorta sick. It's so beyond the simple idea of just punching stuff, just gauntlets, or having large metal fists to punch with like that, as it sort of mixes gunlance and charge blade style concepts into these giant, oversized, entire arm encompassing fist weapons. I feel the need to mention that the first time I saw someone bring up rocket fists as a concept for Monster Hunter was back in the weapon design contest for Iceborne. I can't find the actual original creator to credit them correctly, but they submitted this design, and as someone who didn't play gunlance at that time, I absolutely thought that it deserved to win, and the fact that it didn't is still a crime to this day. But this feels like an evolution of that visual concept evolved into its own weapon class by this newer creator. This creator even attributed a full-on moveset to it, and the idea is that it works on a file-based system, with each fist having separate files from each other, with some attacks loading or spending files from either fist independently, and special attacks like a beam that can fire one of each of your files per second that you hold the button down. They even went as far as to suggest aerial attack variants and combos, and even the ability to like bounce up and down when doing it successfully, almost like a blunt insect glaive in much shorter bursts where you actually have to spend something for this result. And while I think this is definitely technologically beyond most Monster Hunter weapons in the series, it has so much cool factor to it that I would happily look past that without question. Next up is something that I have been toying around with in my head for a very long time and refining the concept of, which is a javelin flail hybrid, which probably sounds crazy when you just hear those words, but hear me out here. The base concept is like a great flail, a big two-handed flail with a big two-handed shaft, chain coming off of the shaft on one end of it. The other end of the chain is like a blunt wrecking ball or spiked like a morning star's end even. The other end of the shaft comes to a point like a spear or a javelin. You can use it like a great flail, just sort of standardly, or you can have a sort of short-range projectile attack where you launch the pointy end of the stick, the javelin itself, at the monster, and it gets lodged lodged inside of them in a specific body part. And I'm talking quite short range projectile as well. I don't want it to feel like a ranged weapon. I just want this to be a function of an otherwise melee weapon, because the weight of the chain would obviously make it very hard to be accurate throwing it from further away. As long as you are within the length of the chain though, the javelin would stay within the body part that you lodge it, and you would simply swing the chain around to strike with the ball at the end, and this mode would be much faster, almost like having a transforming weapon, but the transformation is sticking the pointy end inside of the monster. The mechanic that I envision around this is if the flail part hits where the javelin is lodged in the monster, it does extra damage, almost like a hammer into chisel, and then you could also have some sort of cool combo finisher type attacks to pull the javelin out manually with like a cool flourish, using like the weight of the flail end and the chain to pull it out, swing it around on the chain itself, and then slice with the javelin's end, but again by swinging it from the chain itself, so almost like using a flail in reverse. So the moveset would realistically be mostly flaily, with big heavy flail being the standard, javelin projectile attack as a sort of interim option, and then the short range faster flail animations while the javelin is actually stuck into the monster. As a physical concept, I don't think it's that complex of a thing to consider, but I feel like this would do something very interesting in terms of a playstyle that is unlike any other weapon, while also just visually providing an option unlike anything else too, almost like a big hunting version of a kusarigama, and I think that that could be absolutely sick. Third today is a concept that I think I've talked about before that I love, which is endemic life slingshot, a new type of ranged weapon that instead of firing bullets or arrows, instead fires things like the elemental beetles that we had in Risebreak that you could just throw at things, or you could shoot these status toads at monsters to apply statuses as well. The main differentiating factor of the gameplay is that I would say that it should feel like a heavier version of bow. I would make it so all of the shots have quite a noticeable arc to them, like a less extreme version of cluster ammo from bowguns, just to fit the concept of a slingshot, because it would obviously be less high powered of an ammo shot than any of the other ranged weapons we have. And while I thought this idea was sort of funny back in Risebreak, I think it's actually more fitting now, because we know that endemic life aren't staying the way that they were in Risebreak, because now we don't just pick up and carry around endemic life like toads and beetles like we did before as an average hunter, so it sort of leaves a space open for a hunter who would do those things, who would use those tools to be its own unique weapon type and fill its own niche. You could have it extend to like, maybe you could have like vigor wasps for healing as an option that some of the weapons would have, or you could even have it do like combos, like maybe something leaves a flammable surface on monsters and then another endemic life type to detonate that surface. Generally speaking, I love this concept, but the moveset, I'm not too set on what it would actually like function like. I just love the idea of an endemic life focused weapon type specifically, something that uses the concepts from Risebreak but as a weapon type, now that that isn't a part of the game as a base. One thing that you could add as well is like a gauge where you fight, and as you keep fighting, spirit birds gather around you to like represent your attachment to the endemic life or something, and it's like a gauge that fills up as more birds fill around you, and once you are fully surrounded by them, maybe you can then command the big group of spirit birds to do a big attack, like a little gust of them fired forwards like a bird tornado or something like that. Mostly, I just love the way that you could straight up perform combat with endemic life in Risebreak, and I would love that to be reimagined as a full weapon to continue in the series in future games as well. Moving on to the next slot is something also fairly Risebreak related, which is a permanent wyvern riding, or you could view it like a representation of the story spin-off riders within the mainline games. But I love the idea of a hunter that straight up uses a monster as their weapon. They would have to be like juveniles or adolescent monsters just for the sake of hitboxes, of course, and visual clarity compared to the other weapons, but the idea of your moveset just being to command a monster to use its actual attacks is always awesome. You could have the moveset change for each rideable monster like wyvern riding in Risebreak, and the way that I would do it personally is to make each weapon tree at the smithy just be the actual monster that tree is related to. So Rathalos tree gives you a rideable Rathalos, Gravios tree is a rideable Gravios as examples, and then they have the upgrades along the tree, and we could make those be like adding battle armor to the monsters, like ranging from small plates of armor in the early upgrade tiers to like a full armor suit on the full end upgrade. And you can have the armor style be unique to the monster, like Rathalos might get like a knightly plate armor set on top of it, but something like Kongolala, maybe just give it like silly little wooden armor or like leather armor to fit it better as a monster itself. The other thing I think would work really well for this concept is the idea of your health bar representing your ability to stay on the monster instead of your literal health. Maybe you just get sent off of the monster and your monster takes you back to the camp, and that replaces the cart animation when you're using that weapon. Maybe you change it so you have two lives in a sense, like maybe you get knocked off of the monster from your first health bar and then your monster like has to disappear for a while, and the only way that you can get it back is to like run around and attack with your mounting knife to build up a gauge to like summon it back, almost like a mech suit type of playstyle loop from other games perhaps. Then finally we have my real baby, the first weapon concept I ever came up up with for this series that I still stand by to this day, the Great Shield. We have small swords, we have big swords, we have double swords, we have sword and shield, we have lance and shield, we have gunlance, which also has a shield. There are guns and a gun that can block, but we do not have a weapon where the main offense of the weapon is the shield itself. Other than, I guess, technically you could say that Charge Blade's axe mode uses the shield as the axe head, but that's not quite what I mean. I want a weapon that straight up is a big shield the whole way through. The base idea is big, giant, two-handed shield, biggest shield that we would have in the series, best guarding option there is, just as a base, but you cannot move at all or turn at all while you are guarding with it. And this would probably have some sort of forward bash offset maneuver to fit it in Wilds as well. However, this would also be a transforming weapon, where you can split the big shield into two smaller shields, one attached to each of your forearms. The big shield mode is simply holding your arms together, sort of like Frankie from One Piece. Super! Then when you take your arms apart, you get the more mobile dual shield mode, which would effectively be faster, dual-wielded, blunt damage weapons, sort of like tonfas. My main idea with these is that you could add files to them, but make it so files only charge from blocking damage. Maybe have the file work more like Switch Axe than Charge Blade, where it's like represented by a gauge instead of more like ammo, and then you could use this gauge to empower the dual shield attacks. I mean, I could also imagine something like using file charge to get a big special attack from the full great shield itself, like maybe shoot some juice out of the bottom to bonk the big two-handed shield up into the air, and then just attack with the momentum and weight of it crashing back down onto the monster. But the entire main idea is I want a shield so big and unwieldy when connected that it feels like a full-on brick wall attached to your hunter. And hey, this is something I have suggested in the past. Maybe it's a bit over the top, but I love the idea of like an element reflect. Like maybe a monster shoots a fireball at you while you have the big shield. If you time an attack correctly, what you do is just reflect the fireball back at it. You shoot its own projectile back at it and do damage compared to the projectile that it fired. But the main thing, again, that I really like here is the big shield. It could be varied in any way around that, but I just want a big fuck-off shield that you actually use to hit things with. That's it then. Those are my favorite ideas for new weapons, most of them right out of my own noggin, except the boom fist, which I think are just such a cool idea for a weapon as well. Overall, the 14 weapons that we already have are incredible, and they already fit such a wide variety of playstyle niches that it's entirely possible that we'd never get another new one. But on the off chance that we do, these are the things that I think could fit the vibe of the games and fill a whole new unique role compared to the pre-existing weapon types we already have. Of course, we could always see the return of something like Prowler mode from Generations, where you played as a Palico, or Tonfa or Magnet Spike from Frontier. Even Excellax from Monster Hunter Explorer would be cool to see in the main series, but these are the ideas that I would like to see happen that have never been in a Monster Hunter game before. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and let me know either your thoughts on these weapon concepts, or hey, even tell me your own potential weapon ideas to come to the series too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.